So, you've been ill for some time now, and the doctor gave you a terminal diagnosis some time ago. And so you've used the time wisely to prepare for your transition to the next state, the next life. And you've been training in the stages of the after-death process. So you're familiar with these stages. In fact, you've gotten enough energy to sit up during the dying process and turn your attention to the experience. At the first stage of dying, you feel your body become very weak and heavy. You recognize this as the form aggregate dissolving. You remember that this correlates with the dissolving of the earth element and the faculty of vision. You find it difficult to open and close your eyes. The field of vision is very dim and unclear. Mind feels confused and easily annoyed. But internally, you see a vision, like a mirage in the distance. And you recognize this as the first stage of the dying process, the dissolution of the earth element. Next, you feel your mouth become dry. You feel like all of your bodily fluids are drying up. You recognize these as the signs of the dissolution of the second aggregate, the feeling aggregate, associated with the water element. faculty of hearing. You feel like you're sweating, but you feel cold. Your hearing becomes dim. You're no longer aware of feelings of pain and pleasure. The mind is starting to become hazy, nervous, a bit irritable. Then you see an internal image of a silver gray smoke. And you recognize this as a sign of the second stage of the dying process, the dissolution of the feelings aggregate. Next, your body begins to feel very cold. You recognize this as a sign of the dissolution of the third aggregate, the discriminations aggregate. When the fire element becomes weak, and your sense of smell becomes weak. With the dissolution of the fire element, your digestion begins to fail, completely fails. Begin to have trouble breathing. One minute your mind is clear and the next minute it's unclear. Internally, you see a vision like sparks or fireflies. And you recognize this as a sign of the dissolution of the third aggregate, the discriminations aggregate. Next, your breathing becomes even more difficult. May even start to rattle. You recognize this as a sign of the wind element dissolving. That is, the sign of the mental formations aggregate dissolving. Your sense of taste fails. Your out-breath becomes long, but the in-breath becomes shorter. Your eye movement slows down, and you cannot recognize your loved ones anymore. You see certain visions according to your karmic tendencies. Either terrifying images or peaceful, pleasant images. Internally, you see the appearance of a sputtering flame. And you recognize this as the dissolution of the aggregate of mental formations. Next, you experience the dissolution of your consciousness. The 80 conceptions of the ordinary mind begin to dissolve. One by one, the 33 thought states dissolve. Fear, sorrow, attachment, and so on. The 40 subtle thought states begin to dissolve. Rapture, pride, deceit, and so on. The 7 deluded thought states dissolve. Doubt, laziness, depression, and so on. Internally, you see a vision of a steady red flame. And you realize that this indicates the dissolution of the 5th aggregate, the consciousness aggregate. you experience a radiant white sky. And you experience a white drop descending from the crown of your head down to your heart chakra. This is called the mind of radiant white appearance. And it indicates the dissolution of the subtle mind. Next, you experience a red drop ascending, arising from the base of your spine and moving up to your heart chakra. At this point, you have an internal image of a radiant red sky. The length of these experiences depends on your own practice and spiritual awareness. The radiant white appearance may be short or long. The radiant red appearance may be short or long. But you can recognize this as the stage of the dissolution of the subtle consciousness. The important thing is to recognize these as the nature of your own mind, nothing to be afraid of, all empty of true existence. And relax into that awareness of the emptiness of your own mind. in this state of awareness of the true empty nature of your own mind as long as you like. And then slowly open your eyes. Any questions? Is it okay? No? Not too scary? Remember why we're doing this, right? To liberate all beings from the 6 realms of existence. So we have a pure motivation for our practice. And later we'll dedicate to share the merit with all beings. Okay, well, now, again, let's break into our discussion groups, our pairs, for the compassionate listening exercise for one last time. And the question for this time is asking your partner, how would you like to prepare for your own dying? How do you plan to prepare for your own dying? Okay? So please move into your groups, into your according to your colors, and choose a new partner to share with. Okay? So now we have about 20 minutes left for questions and our wrap-up meditation. So would anyone like to share? Yes, please. Or share your experience or ask a question if you don't want.
It's on.
I just have a question. So I read a book called Tibetan Book of Life and Death, and it introduced I wouldn't say it's a ceremony, but pova. So will this happen before pova, or like is there anything in between? So what will happen?
Okay, so she's asking about the poa practice. Poa literally meaning transference of consciousness. So the poa practice is a preparation for dying, similar to what we've just meditated on. It's a more complex meditation where we try to gather the 72,000 winds of the body from the 72 channels, through the 72,000 channels, and bring them into the right, left, and central psychic channels. So this ordinarily comes with advanced training. The meditation that we just did is something that anyone can do. Even if someone were not a Buddhist, they could do this practice. But of course we need to practice with it. But the poa practice requires special training. And generally it's taught in a week-long course to familiarize ourselves with all of the 72 winds and channels of the body, and then bringing them into the central psychic channel and bringing them up to the very top of the head. But no further, because if you do, then your consciousness leaves the body, and you're not ready to do that now. You just practice in learning to channel it, And then, at the moment of death, you could take your consciousness to the Pure Land, right? So it's part of a tantric meditation practice that includes visualization of Amitabha's Pure Land and the visualization of all these 72,000 winds of the body. So it's quite complicated. And of course, this would be the last moment. So after the recognition of the true empty nature of one's own mind, then you would start this kind of, you could do a more complicated practice, you see. So, but it takes training.
Yes, ma'am. May I ask, you just mentioned that, well, that complicated practice that lead your conscious to the pure mind, pure land. Is it different from rebirth? If you go to pure land, or it means that you are not going to take the reborn again in the sixth realm.
That's right.
Well, sorry, maybe another question is the same. If we practice as you described, but at the end of the practice, well, we decide not to be reborn or re-exist again. Can that be the case?
Well, yes. Okay, so with this practice, you can travel to the Pure Land. Of course, you can meditate on Pure Land practice while you're still living, during meditation. It's possible in for certain highly advanced practitioners that we can actually go to the Pure Land in meditation and receive teachings and then continue through our lives, right? But what we're talking about here is going to the Pure Land after death, at the time of death, right? And sending our consciousness through this soft spot at the top of the head. The consciousness ejects. We go, ping! And then off to the Pure Land. And that would be final. No more rebirth. Or you could say rebirth in the Pure Land. Right? And from the Pure Land, it's said to be very easy to achieve perfect awakening. So just being born in the Pure Land it's not the end, because we still need to accumulate merit and wisdom in the Pure Land. But it's much easier there, because we're not distracted by all of our family obligations, our work commitments, all of our normal delusions. We can focus completely. And so it's said to be very easy to achieve perfect awakening in a Pure Land, if we have accumulated enough karma and enough wisdom, right? But in the Pure Land itself, we can accumulate merit and wisdom. So the process, is, they say, goes very quickly.
Venerable, we just gone through the process of dying, but under your guided meditation. But the thing is, when we actually is in that state of the final journey, no one will be there to guide us. But how are we going to face it? What are we going to supposed to do? Because it's all these stages of recognition and the fading of our big four and all that, you know, so complicated, I can't even remember now. But how are we going to do it?
Well, I'm sorry to say that you're going to have to do it alone. Because we're all born alone and we all die alone. So that's just the fact of the matter. There's no choice about this. And that's why we have to prepare well. So there are some films about the Tibetan Book of the Dead. There's a 2-part series. It's about 2 hours long, a French film. And it's taken up in Ladakh. And they show a man dying and a lama coming to the bedside and reading what's called the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which is not the actual name. It's called the Liberation in the Bardo through Hearing, right? So it's a practice of reading the stages of the dying process to the person who's in the process. But ultimately, you see, unless we have control over our mind, and especially as we learned in the second stage, our power of hearing goes. So ultimately, we need to internalize these stages through our practice. We have to make them our own. We have to learn them. And we're very good about learning, the lives of movie stars and things like that. So why not, turn our attention to these important things? We can remember the price of bananas and all these silly things. Why not use our mental capacity for learning these stages? Because that's what's really important. All of the worldly stuff is useless, right? So the Tibetans always say, when we go to the next existence, we don't take anything with us except our knowledge. And when they came out of Tibet, I just told the story of how they fled from Tibet in 1959 and in those years. And they say, we came with nothing, empty hands. We didn't even have our teacup. And for a Tibetan, that's a disaster. If you not to have your teacup, because the Tibetans drink somewhere between 30 and 60 cups of tea a day. And to be without your teacup, that's just as bad as it gets. And so they use this as an example. My teachers used to tell us that the only thing that they had when they left was their knowledge. All of those years of study were the only things that really counted. All the books, all of the images, everything had to be left behind. The dog, the flowers, everything. All they had was the knowledge that they brought with them. So it's the same for us. Our real treasure is our knowledge of the text and our practice, right, that will enable us to recall that information when we really need it. So it's very good that you raised this question. Yeah, we could practice reading it to each other. We could even tape it or listen to that video. Or we can read it. But the most important thing is to internalize it. Make this knowledge our own. They say that we only use about 3% of our intelligence. So we feel that, seeing all of this, that we're up to here. But actually, we are capable of learning so much more. We're really wasting our capacity. And so don't feel that you can't learn. We can all learn if we put our mind to it. Yeah. Good. Yes.
Is the process more or less the same? Is the process you described in this session more or less for every dying, and the stages or steps come out in the same sequence? And how about if I died from an accident, and in a very short time, then the process or the stages is still, yeah.
Right. Well, the process of dying is similar for everyone, but never exactly the same for any two people, because we all have different capacities, we all have different experience. They say that in the case of a sudden accident, our consciousness will eject immediately, and our destination is determined by our karma and delusions. So, delusions meaning, do we get angry at that moment? If a car hits us, do we die in a state of anger toward that driver or whatever? And so this shows the importance of training our mind to remain calm in all situations. Remember the 4 immeasurables. Last one is equanimity. So even if someone were to come up with a gun or a knife, we'd still want to remain calm. which, by the way, is our best protection in that circumstance. If we freak out and get angry, that's the best way to get killed. Right? But if we stay calm, collected, then that's the best state to die in. So, but if we're in a sudden accident, we really don't have that much time to think. We have to, the likelihood is that our consciousness would eject immediately, and then whatever good deeds we've done, that will be our destination. So, yeah.
If we're at the deathbed of a person,
hello, close to the mic, hello.
If we're at the deathbed of a person, would you recommend we do chanting when he's going through the transition, or should we keep quiet and let him do it quietly without disturbance?
Okay, well, it depends on the person, right? If the person is a Christian, then we wouldn't want to do the chanting of Amitabha's name. But it could be that the person, like, I remember singing to my mom. I was singing Amazing Grace, you know the song? I think I had the Janis Joplin version, but anyway, she was happy enough because that was her favorite song. But then at the very moment of transition, we left her in peace, just to go through her process. So now, if someone is a follower of Amitabha Buddha, and they've been chanting this mantra, then I think that might be the very best thing, because that is their choice to, they invite the people to come and chant for them. And they have a very strong and positive association with this chanting. And it reminds them of Amitabha Buddha and the Pure Land of Amitabha Buddha. So that's a great way to go. So we need to know the background of the person, their religious affiliation, and do what is appropriate in that situation. If the person's an atheist, we don't want to force or, kind of coerce them in any way about religion. That would be unethical. But we could still help them through the dying process without mentioning religion, without using anything religious. In fact, as we noted, there's nothing religious about these stages. Everyone will go through them, unless it's a sudden accident. So, yeah.
Venerable, my question is, so regarding dying, in the Theravada tradition, they have a momentarism. That is, every, there is a stream of consciousness. And then at the end of the last moment, the moment unit, or that would determine your rebirth, the restarting conscious. So if that last moment is good, bringing equanimity level, then for the next rebirth will be good. But since that moment is the time moment is so short, infinitesimally short, then how can you manage? Because if you are most of the time under a equanimity state, but in the very last moment you suddenly shift to kind of different thing, then your whole next life will be completely different. So how can we manage the cases like that? And also, in case, for example, if you know that you're under the flat of a robber, and then that person will kill you, and then you immediately will think of how to plan your family and all the other things. So then your mind will not be under equanimity because you're thinking too much about the other thing. But then it's a problem that it's quite natural. You have to plan for, you know, your family, your wife, or everything. You can't just sit there, you know, you have an hour of life and then you're doing nothing, you know, and then just meditate. And so how to solve this problem?
Well, the time to make all the preparations for your family is beforehand. You don't want to spend your last hour thinking about those things. It would be a distraction, right? And they wouldn't want you to be thinking about those things. Those are things that you should try to put into place now, right? Get your will all signed and everything, you know, give away what you want to, or tell them what you want to go to whom, so that that's all done. And you don't have to worry about that. But you're absolutely right that the last moment could be something different than we expect. And this is the importance of the practice. So a person could be very gentle and very kind and very thoughtful and very aware, but at the last moment, attachment or anger could arise, and that would be very unfortunate. So we have to be really solid in our practice. Of course, the opposite could be true. Someone could be a robber or a murderer, but in the last moment could have a very kind and gentle, loving thought and get a better rebirth next time. So it can happen both ways. But it really makes the point that we need to prepare for that last moment, because whether it's Theravada or Mahayana perception, that last moment of death is the moment, the proximate moment of the moment after that. Therefore, that moment is vitally important, and we want to make it the very best quality moment we can. Yeah.
Venerable, as we lose our the sight of our eyes and our hearing, which are the most important, so early in the stage, in the stages. So how are we going to request our family members, friends, to help us go through the stages? How are we going to educate them to do it, or educate ourselves to help our family members who are dying?
Okay, well, just like the thoughts of the family in the question before, you'd want to make all those arrangements long in advance. So you'd want to wait for the proper moment and discuss this. Tell the family that you'd like them, please, not to cry, that you'll be just fine because you've been meditating and you're pretty, you know, confident that you know what to do at the last moment. So, and whatever you'd like to share with them, that it'd be better to just allow you to go through the stages of the dying process. And you can reassure them every day that you love them in various ways, not necessarily words, but with kindness, so that you have a good relationship with them. You don't have to wait to the last moment. Oh, by the way, Mom, I love you. Too late. Right? We want to live in a loving way with our family and friends in advance. Don't wait till the last hour or so. Because, as you say, the faculty of hearing is going to go, everything's going to go. So it's too late to do that sort of thing. We want to make sure that we know the stages of the process and that we can handle. That kind of feeling of confidence is very important, and it comes through training, education, and practice, practice, practice.
Close.
It's something that's been bothering me for many years. When my father was critically ill, like he closed his eye, he couldn't open his eye, and he got tubes for breathing and for food and all that. So I thought I would bring in a Buddha statue to the hospital room And I also put up a Guan Yin sticker on his bedroom window. He hadn't moved, he hadn't opened his eyes. But as soon as I put in that, he went crazy. He was pulling off his tube and he was climbing up the bed. So, I mean, as of today, I still couldn't comprehend what had happened there. Have I done something really stupid?
Tell me, was your father a Buddhist?
He would pay tribute, but he doesn't, meditate or chant or do anything.
Okay.
Like he's a Buddhist in a very traditional Chinese way. Yeah.
Well, first of all, this happened a lot before, and there's no way that we can change it. You can know that your intention was good, that you hope to help him through the process. It may have disturbed him because it was something sort of sudden toward the end. And as we noted, irritability is a sign of certain stages of the process. So it probably would have been better to put it, either probably ask whether or not he would like to have an image of Guan Yin. Right. So maybe we don't want to, I mean, it's probably better not to introduce something new at the very end, because change can sometimes be a bit disruptive. But I don't think it was a bad thing. But it may have reminded him that he is going to die soon, and he might have found that disturbing, right? So, but don't
better not to do
don't blame yourself, because your intention was good. But better to find out when we get a chance to talk to our maybe siblings first, or someone who shares our concern about dying, or if you have an open moment, would it be nice to have some chanting around? See how they feel about it, right? Not to impose it. Would you like to have a Buddha image in the room? Sometimes we can have these discussions just when we're still feeling good and the sun is shining and everyone's healthy. We can have these discussions, and then we'll know for the future the best way to handle it. Yeah? Okay, last question.
Last question.
Last question, give someone else.
Last question 係送俾你哋啊！邊個想問啊？
Thank you. Venerable, this is the last question. So my question is, we talk about karma. So many times when we say you have to do good, not do harm, because of karma. So this kind of thinking, is it also kind of clinging to the result? And then it's breach the theory of, the requirement that it should be, you should practice non-self. And so if you're always thinking about the consequence of the karma, then it's become more or less like a utilitarian. So another thought is you should think it as a duty to do good, to be compassionate. And then it's become, for ethics, it's a deontological ethic. So, according to the German Kant, Immanuel Kant, so he thinks that this is the highest virtue. So how is the Buddhist compare with these? Would it take it as a duty or as a utilitarian mind?
I think it comes for the Buddhists from understanding the theory of cause and effect. Of course, ultimately we do good because it's a good thing. We don't count our results. We don't do good simply to get a good result. Right? I'm going to give $1 to a beggar because then I'll get some good karma and life will be better in the future. That's a bit calculating. Right. So, but right now, maybe we're not at that point where we can just do good all the time just to do good, right? We need somehow first to understand the workings of cause and effect, why it's good to do wholesome actions. because it's beneficial to ourselves and others. And why it's good to avoid unwholesome actions? Well, because they're harmful to ourselves and others. So we do remind ourselves of the workings of cause and effect. That's positive. That's wholesome, actually. And we even meditate on this, too. We meditate on the law of cause and effect, just as we meditated last time on suffering, until we really get it, right? Because if we really got it, that is, if we really understood the law of cause and effect, we would probably live our lives in a very different way. And that's the beauty of meditation on death and impermanence, is that it reminds us of the inevitability of our final end and how we need to live in a meaningful way. Live in a meaningful way and accumulate as many wholesome actions as we can. We do good to do good and keep doing good, right? And that's the best way to live our lives. Not only does it make us happy in this lifetime, not only does it make the people around us happy, but it also helps us to prepare for whatever comes after. Right? Good. Okay, so I'd like to end with a meditation called Tonglen. Maybe some of you have done this before. It's a meditation on loving kindness to end this session. Of course, we have Saturday still together, but our session tonight will end with this loving kindness meditation called Tong, meaning to send, and Len, meaning to take. So what we do in this meditation is to meditate with all our mother, sister, and all of our girlfriends, female friends on the right side, and our father, our brothers, and so forth, all of our male friends on the left of us. And then we practice taking in all of the sufferings of sentient beings, all of the problems of the world, and transforming them into their opposites. Okay, so all of our female friends, relatives, and all female sentient beings on the right, all male relatives, male friends, and male sentient beings on the left. And I guess we could also include all of the non-gendered, those who are gender non-specific. So we have all living beings together. And then we imagine that at our heart, there's a small black dot. Okay. And we practice taking in all the problems of the world one by one and transforming them into their opposites. So we begin by taking on all of the hunger of the world and transforming it at our heart into abundant food for all living beings. And we can coordinate this with our breathing. So in the in-breath, we take on all the hunger. With the out-breath, we send out all good things to eat. Then we take on all the thirst of sentient beings and transform it into good things to drink. So don't hang on to it. Immediately transform it at your heart. Take on all the poverty of sentient beings and transform it into abundance. Take on all the illness of sentient beings and transform it into health. Take on all the loneliness of sentient beings and transform it into friendships. Take on all the fears of sentient beings and transform them into courage. Take on all the depression of sentient beings and transform it into joy. Take on all the anger of sentient beings and transform it into patience. Take on all the greed of sentient beings and transform it into contentment. Take on all the stinginess of sentient beings and transform it into generosity. Take on all the arrogance of sentient beings. Transform it into humility. Take on all the jealousy of sentient beings and transform it into rejoicing in the happiness and good qualities and good fortune of others. Take on all the ignorance of sentient beings. Transform it into wisdom. Take on all the bondage of sentient beings and transform it into freedom. So now we end with rejoicing in our practice and sharing the merit of our practice with all living beings. Virtue of the merit that we have accumulated, may we achieve the state of perfect awakening in order to liberate all living beings from suffering, leaving not one behind. Thank you.
So we thank you, Venerable, for tonight's teaching on the death and enlightenment in Tibet. 咁亦都非常感謝慧空法師今晚嘅開示係關於死亡同埋覺悟喺西藏傳佛教嘅理解嘅。咁其實香港文化中心我哋嚟緊嘅碩士班課程裏邊，亦都有一個藏傳佛教嘅課程嘅，將會喺8月尾嘅時間舉行。咁就由8月尾一路去到11月中咧，就會有個藏傳佛教嘅教導，就會由一位希臘籍嘅教授 Professor Helkias 咁就會主講嘅，咁就會係碩士班第2學期嘅其中一個課程嚟嘅。咁如果各位有興趣，亦都可以同我哋義工聯絡，係理解更加多嘅資料嘅。
Once again, thank you to everyone for coming, and there is one more session, and I hope to see all of you there on Saturday at 2 o'clock, right here, same time, same place, with a You are very mindful, very good. You passed the test. Right, 2 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. Thank you very much.
我哋下一場工作坊係星期六嘅2點進行嘅，咁就我哋會有另外一位法師主講嘅，咁我哋希望星期六亦都歡迎希望再次見到各位嘅光臨嘅。咁我哋最後就請大家起立，就合十，我哋先向法師問訊。Please rise and we join our palms and we pay respects to Venerable Karma Lekshe Tsomo. 亦都恭請法師可以先行離席。So we invite Venerable to take a rest in the conference room.